Hari Om to all devotees of the Lord. Today we will be proceeding with Bhagavad Geeta, chapter 15 from verse number 7. Now, last week we saw a very beautiful verse which is similar to a quotation or a verse from the Kata Upanishad. And in this verse number 6 of chapter 15, the Lord gave us the ultimate destination of every seeker. The ultimate destination is called Brahman, that which is unmanifest, all-pervading, supreme consciousness, or Satchit Ananda. And how do you describe something that is unmanifest? So the scriptures have to use a lot of poetry, a lot of allegory to describe that destination. And there is this verse from the Katha Upanishad that says, Na tatra suryo bhati na chandra tarakam nema vidyuto bhanti kutoyam agnihi tam eva bhantam anubhati sarvam tasya bhasha sarvam idam vibhati. Which means that the destination or the goal of every seeker is that where Suryo na tatra suryo bhati, where the sun doesn't shine, na chandra, neither does the moon, na tarakam, neither do the stars, nema vidyuto bhanti, neither do flashes of lightning illumine that destination. Kutoyam agnihi, what more to speak about the little flame, a little fire, when this large, huge effulgences of the sun, moon cannot shine there. What more to speak about the effulgence of fire? And then it goes on to say, Tam eva bhantam anubhati sarvam. You are that source of the effulgence. You are that effulgence. Tasya bhasha sarvam idam vibhati. By that effulgence, everything else in this universe shines. So the sun does not shine because of its own effulgence. The moon does not shine because of its own effulgence. Everything that has effulgence is borrowed effulgence from the Lord Himself. That is the destination. It does not mean that it's a very dark place that we have to travel to merge with the Lord, but it means that His effulgence is so bright that nothing else can outshine it. And this verse in the Bhagavad Gita chapter 15 verse 6 says exactly the same thing. When the Lord said the same thing here, Na tad bhasayate suryo, where the sun doesn't shine, na shashanko, neither the moon, na pavaka, neither does fire shine there. Now this prayer which I mentioned from the Katha Upanishad is recited normally during the Sandhya Arati, when the idol in a traditional Indian temple is kept in a dark, what we call a dark place, and when the light of the camphor is lit, it is at that time when the idol is illumined and the devotee sets his eyes on God. So what it says is that you are the very source of illumination for everything. And here in chapter 15 verse 6, the Lord says the same thing. Now what is that place where the sun doesn't shine, the moon doesn't shine, and fire doesn't illumine? The Lord says, Tat dhama paramam mama. That Tat is dhama, abode of what? Mama, mine. Paramam, which is the most supreme abode, which is the ultimate destination of every seeker. And what happens when the seeker reaches that destination? He says, Yad gatva na nivartante. Yad gatva, having attained that goal, na nivartante. There is no more return for a devotee to come back for another birth. So that means reaching the destination is ultimate, is moksha. Now, what we have to understand from this effulgence is that it is not a place for us to travel. The devotee upon death, the soul does not travel and meet the Lord. somewhere, what you call where the Lord is sitting or residing. Basically, where is this effulgence? Now, this effulgence is radiating everywhere in the universe. It enlivens everything. So let us understand, where is this effulgence? If it is able to light up everything, it is the same effulgence that is within us that is enlivening this body. Because what is this body made of? It is made of the 5 elements: ether, air, fire, water, earth. So it is made out of the 5 elements, and we know, even science confirms this, that elements have got no life. So elements have got no life, but they can be energized. So this body made out of the 5 elements, because of the presence of the Lord, you can call it Atman, Brahman, what we call supreme consciousness, which is residing in the body. By that, the entire body can function. There is power of speech that we can hear, we can see, we can smell. So this is the source that we are supposed to reach. This is the source that we are supposed to connect, known as Satchit Ananda. It is Sat, means it is truth, it exists. It is Chit, it is mass of consciousness, and it is Ananda. When we connect with this, there is supreme bliss which is experienced. So that is the destination. The Lord is not saying we have to travel somewhere, but understand that source of Satchit Ananda, the source of illumination which is within you. So this is a very powerful message for us to understand, very allegorically and beautifully put, and which conforms with the teachings of the Upanishads. So having understood this, this is the goal. Now let us move on to the verse number 7, which are all very profound verses, because they deal with the knowledge which is given in the Upanishads. So in verse 6, the goal of the spiritual seeker was identified, and that goal can only be understood through knowledge and reached through hearing that knowledge, sravanam, reflecting on that knowledge, mananam, and nitidhyasanam, which means to meditate on that knowledge. So that is also a beautiful couplet from Kabir when he says, "Jaise til mein tel hai, jo chakmag mein aag, tere saai tujh mein hai, tu jaag sake to jaag." Kabir says, just like til, which is a sesame seed, has got tail, which means the sesame seed has got sesame oil. Chakmag mein aag. Chakmag is a flintstone. In the flintstone there is fire, there is aag. So how do we realize that there is oil in the sesame seed? We have to put some effort, we have to crush the seed, and then we see the oil. Before that, if we don't put effort, we can't see the oil. Similarly, the stone contains heat, but only when we put effort and rub the 2 stones do we see the sparks of fire. Same way, Kabir says, "Tere sai tujh mein hai," your divinity is within you. To jaag sake to jaag. May you wake up and realize this highest truth. So effort through knowledge has got to be put. Now in verse number 7, we are told more about this soul. And there is a lot of confusion always when we say that the soul travels. But can the soul travel? Can Atma travel? Why do I say this? Why do I ask this question? Because Atma is all-pervading. It is everywhere. How can something that is all-pervading travel from one place to another? Like you have space in your kitchen, you have space in your dining room, you have space in your living room. Space is everywhere. It is subtle. Can you take space from your living room and move it to your dining room? You cannot, because it is subtle and it is everywhere. In the same way, Atman is all-pervading. Then at the time of death, what is it that travels? This is beautifully explained in the next few verses. Now, to understand this, I will give you a simple illustration. I've come across this illustration which I think explains this whole travel upon death. for us to understand. I don't have a board here, otherwise it'll be more easier to explain. So please pay close attention. Now let us take the example of a wooden frame. Okay, a wooden frame. In the wooden frame, there is a piece of mirror, a glass. Now, if I take 100 wooden frames with the glass and I put it outdoor in the sun, underneath the sun, there is only one sun. But because the glass can reflect the sun, I will see the reflection of 100 suns. What I'm seeing is 100 suns, but in reality, there is only one sun which is blazing in the sky. Now, what does all this mean? The wooden frame represents the cross body. The gross body in Sanskrit is called Stula Sharira, S-T-H-U-L-A. Stula means gross, Sharira means body. The mirror represents the Sukshma Sharira, S-U-K-S-H-M-A. Sukshma means subtle, body, and Karana Sharira, which is the causal body. So mirror represents two things, Sukshma Sharira, Karana Sharira. What is Sukshma Sharira? Sukshma Sharira, very briefly, has got four components. Our subtle body has got four components. Mana, Buddhi, Chitta, Ahankara. Mana is the emotional mind that is guided by likes and dislikes. Buddhi is the intellect, the discriminating intellect that differentiates or helps us to differentiate between right and wrong. Chitta is the memory bank that stores all the past memories of our actions, our memories, and Ahankar is the driving force, the ego that drives our actions. Now, this is a subtle body. So at the time of death, the wooden frame that represents the gross body is destroyed. It is of no use. We throw away the wooden frame. At the time of death, the subtle body leaves the gross body. Now, why we can't see it? Because it is subtle. So the subtle body consisting of Mana, Buddhi, Chitta, Ahankara, and the causal body known as the Karana Sharira, is an imprint of all our actions. Every action we perform, there is a residue, there is a effect, and that effect is imprinted into our causal body. When we say causal body, means that impressions are the cause of our next birth. So if we have led a sensual life, we have led a materialistic life, our causal body will lead us to another birth where we will carry on with the same desires. So now we have destroyed the wooden frame, we take the glass mirror and we move it and we find another new wooden frame and we deposit the same glass back in the new wooden frame. Now, remember I talked about the reflected sun? Now, what happens to the reflected sun? The reflection of the sun will follow wherever the mirror follows. This is the traveling jiva. It is part and parcel of the sun. It is a reflection of the sun. But it is that reflected sun which travels. The original sun does not travel. So the reflected sun, which is known as the jiva, travels along with the subtle and the causal bodies, and when the mirror is deposited in a new frame, then the reflected sun is still there. So what travels is the jiva, the reflection of the sun. Now, having understood this, now let us go into this verse, which what the Lord explains here. Okay, so he says that in this verse, he says, Amsa. So look at the very first line of verse number 7, chapter 15. Mama eva amsa. Mama eva amsa. Jiva loke. This jiva, this reflected consciousness which is in the world, in the loke, is, the Lord says, is an amsa. Amsa means a part, a reflection, a fraction of what? Mama eva, myself alone. So the reflected consciousness in all the bodies, in all the creation, not only in living beings, but also in rocks, in trees, etc., is a portion of the reflection of the totality of the consciousness. So, the Lord says, so that's why we will see slowly. He says that is eternal also, because as long as the sun is there, the reflected suns will be there. As long as our subtle body exists, there will always be a reflection of that original consciousness in us. So the Lord says this fraction of myself, which is called a jiva, jiva bhutam, has become a jiva, has come into this creation. Okay, it's a reflection of myself, and it has come into this creation as the various beings, which are moving and non-moving also. Okay, so where is this existing? The jiva bhuta in the jagat is here, right here in this creation. Okay, where are these jivas? Jiva loke, they are here in this world, referring to all the 14 lokas, because Lord's effulgence is shining all over the world, all over the universe. So all the 14 lokas, the reflected consciousness is there. And it is sanatana, it is eternal. Because I said before, as long as the sun exists, as long as the subtle bodies exist, there will always be the reflected consciousness. When will the jiva cease to exist? When the person reaches a state of self-realization, then the subtle body and the causal body don't exist further than that, and therefore the reflected consciousness merges back with the original consciousness. Okay, so what we call, this is what it says, jiva loke, and they are eternal, they are in this world. Okay, and why do they have to come back again and again? Because as long as we perform actions with attachment, there will be impressions, there will be desires unfulfilled, and because of that we have to come back again for another birth also. We have to go through the cycle of samsara. Now what happens to all this, what we call the jiva? Says it is subtle, we can't see it. So where does it exist? He says sthani, prakatish sthani. Sthani means it exists, it abides in where? Prakriti, in this gross body. So the gross body of the whole creation, whether it is a human being, animal, insect, tree, rock, whatever it is, the jiva is existing in all these gross bodies, prakriti. So Lord uses the word prakriti, which basically means matter, okay, the gross body. So prakriti sthani, it abides in the prakriti. This is the where the jiva is established in. Now therefore what happens at the time of death? Okay, at the time of death, when the old gross body is gone, it's destroyed, it's cremated, what happens to the jiva and the subtle body and causal body? This is what he says. He says, Indriyani mana shastani karshati. So Lord says, Indriyani means the sense organs. Now the sense organs do not mean the physical eye, nose, ear. It is the subtle power which gives the power for the eyes to see. It is the subtle power which gives the power to the nose to smell. It is that subtle power which gives the power for the ears to hear. So understand, since the gross body is destroyed, the subtle body which enlivens all these organs, that is what travels. Together with what? Manaha, the Lord says. The manaha, the Lord calls it as the sixth sense. So there are 5 indriyanis, eyes, ears, nose, skin and tongue. Together with the manaha being the sixth sense, what happens? Karshati. Karshati means they are attracted. Where are they attracted? He will explain in the next verse. But basically, What it means is, what are your inclinations? What are your inherent desires? If you are sattvic, if you're pure, then they are attracted to that next birth, the next environment will be given to you to express your purity. If your mind and your senses are attracted by sensual pleasures, then they will be attracted to that next environment, the next body, whereby you will be able to express those desires. So that to express your desires, it can be even an animal body, insect body, or even a human body. So he says the indriyani, the senses, the mind, which is the shastani, the sixth sense, karshati is attracted or draws itself, it drags itself. Now, where does it drag itself? Okay, we will see now in the next verse, verse number 8. So, in the next verse, verse number 8, the Lord says, Yada, when Ishvara, when the Lord, the Master, the ruler, the controller of this entire creation, okay, when he commands, and he will command when the prarabdha karma have come to an end, then the Lord will command the subtle body, the causal body, and along with it the reflected consciousness will move along with it, the jiva. He says, utkramati, it leaves. So under the command of the Lord, under the supervision of the Lord, the subtle, the causal, and the jiva, it utkramati, it leaves shariram, the old gross body. The old gross body, which has now become lifeless, which has reached its end cycle, it has exhausted all the prarabdha karmas. There is no more reason for the subtle, the causal body, and the jiva to be there. So the old gross body is cremated, and this is what travels under the direction, under the guidance of the Lord. And then what happens? He says, yak cha api, and then the Lord commands that this equipment that is left, avapnoti, it attains or assumes a new gross body. So under the direction, under the supervision of the Lord, he commands this equipment to move to a new gross body. And what happens when this equipment departs? He says, samyati, when it departs from the old gross body, grihitve, it takes with it, when the jiva departs from the old body, it takes with it etani, these. What are these? These means it takes the subtle body, it takes the causal body and drags it along to the next birth also. So all the punyam, all the papam, all the vasanas which are contained in the causal body, they are all dragged along with the jiva and deposited in the new body. So the new birth will depend on what is the nature, what is your inherent desires or inherent what we call expressions. So what you died with, what was predominant in your mind, in that direction you will be taken to the right environment to express your express your desires there. So this is so beautifully explained. So we must understand that Atma is all-pervading consciousness. It does not travel. It is the jiva, the reflected consciousness, together with the subtle body and the causal body, that travels to a new body. And to understand, or to make us understand the subtleness of all this going on, the Lord gives us a beautiful allegory in verse number 8. He says, Eva, just like Vayu, the wind, carries the gandha. The gandha means the fragrance or the smell from ashayat. Ashayat means the receptacles of the flower. Now, there is fragrance in the flower. So, supposing the flower is very far away, but when the wind blows, it carries the fragrance which is inherent in the flower. It carries to our direction and we can smell the fragrance of the flowers. It does not carry the whole flower to us, it only carries the fragrance. We cannot see the fragrance because it is subtle, but we can smell the fragrance. So, in the same way, we cannot see the jiva living together with the subtle and causal bodies, but the fragrance, or what is known as the vasanas, which is the imprints of our past actions, that is carried subtly to the next body also. Okay. So here the Lord has used the example of the fragrance, the wind, and the flowers. So what do the flowers or the receptacles represent? The stula sharira, the gross body. The fragrance represents the subtle body, the sukshma sharira, the karana sharira, which we cannot see. And the wind represents the jiva, which pulls that fragrance to another place. So just like the wind, which is invisible, carries the fragrance, which is also invisible, from the flower, which is visible, to another place. In the same way, the jiva, which is not perceptible, carries the sukshma sharira and karana sharira, which also are not perceptible, from the gross body, stula sharira, to another gross body. So, a very beautiful example Krishna gives us here. So, when the jiva leaves the old body, that old body ceases to function. And when the jiva is deposited in a new body, the jiva gives the life also for the new body to start functioning also. Okay. So this is very beautifully explained here. Now, if we want to look at it, supposing we can also understand it through a simple example of electricity and an appliance. So when we see a fan that is moving, we cannot see electricity. But by knowledge, we know that the fan is moving because of the electricity. So by that also, by knowledge, we can understand. We can't see electricity, but we know electricity is in the fan, and that is what is causing the movement. So in the same way, that consciousness is in us, which is also causing life or bringing life to this body also. So up to here, verses 7 and 8 we have looked at, very profound verses, and we will carry on in the next lesson to understand more about this jiva, etc. Hari Om Tat Sat.